In the markets of ancient Rome, there was a fabric so fine, so impossibly light and airy, that moralists denounced it as scandalous, and senators tried to ban men from wearing it. It was silk, and at the height of its fashion, it could be worth its weight in. Roman matrons draped themselves in it. Roman treasuries bled silver to buy it. And yet almost no one in Rome had the faintest idea where it truly came from. They knew only that it arrived from somewhere impossibly far to the east, passed through countless unseen hands. The people who actually made it lived far in a civilization Rome had never met. Between them stretched the greatest field. It had no owner, no headquarters, and no name its own traders would have. We call it the Silk Road. Empire Builders, Episode 16, The Silk Road, the first global supply chain. The Silk Road was not a road. It was a web, a shifting, branching network of tracks, passes, oases, and sea lanes stretching more than 4,000 miles from the Chinese capital of Chang'an. No single merchant ever traveled the whole thing. Goods moved in relays. A bolt of silk might pass through a dozen hands, each one adding cost, each one adding distance from its origin. The geography itself forced this pattern. Between China and the West lay some of the most forbidding terrain on Earth. The Taklamakan Desert, whose very name, some say, means go in and you will not come out. The geography itself forced this pattern. Between China and the West lay some of the most forbidding terrain on Earth. And at every stage, the middlemen took their cut. That is the first great lesson of the Silk Road. In a long supply chain, the real profit often belongs not to the maker or the final buyer, but to whoever controls the passage in between. Each trader bought low from the west, sold high to the east, or vice versa, and passed it to the next middleman. The profit was not in making the silk. It was not in wearing it. It was in moving it. He sold it on again, higher still. By the time silk reached the Mediterranean, it had been marked up so many times that its final price bore almost no relation to its cost of production. They were the ones who controlled a crucial stretch of the route, who spoke the languages on both sides, who knew the safe passes and the reliable oases. And no one played that middleman role better than a people called the Sogdians. They spoke the trade language of the entire network. They kept the contacts, the credit relationships, and the local knowledge that made long-distance trade possible. We have their actual letters, discovered sealed in a watchtower in the desert, preserved for 1,700 years. These so-called ancient letters, abandoned in a ruined tower near Dunhuang around 313 AD, reveal a world of merchant anxiety, unpaid debts, broken promises, and the constant threat of war disrupting trade. The Sogdians were not an empire, and they were not conquerors. They were a merchant network, and for a time, they were the backbone of the entire Silk Road. What actually moved along these routes? Westward, toward Rome and Persia, flowed silk, spices, jade, porcelain, lacquerware, and later paper and gunpowder. But the trade was deeply unbalanced. The West wanted the East's luxury goods far more than the East wanted the North. West's, and so it paid the difference in hard money, in silver and gold coins that flowed steadily eastward for centuries. The Roman writer Pliny the Elder complained bitterly that trade with the East was draining Rome of 100 million sesterces every year. It is one of the oldest recorded anxieties about a trade deficit. And behind the trade lay a jealously guarded secret. For centuries, China alone knew how silk was actually made, and it enforced that monopoly with the death penalty for anyone who tried to smuggle silkworms or their eggs out of the country. The hunger ran the other way too. The Han Emperor Wu became obsessed with the heavenly horses of Fergana and launched military expeditions thousands of miles into Central Asia just to secure a supply of superior war horses. It moved emperors to guard secrets and to launch wars. A network this vast could not run on trust and camels alone. It ran on infrastructure. Strung along the routes were the caravanserais, fortified inns spaced roughly a day's journey apart, where merchants could rest, store goods, water animals, and exchange information. Around the reliable water sources, oasis towns swelled into wealthy cities. Controlling a stretch of the route, or a vital watering hole, was itself a source of enormous wealth. The infrastructure of the road was itself one of its greatest commercial assets. No city embodied this better than Palmyra. Rising from an oasis in the Syrian desert, Palmyra became the great western terminus of the overland trade. Palmyra grew staggeringly wealthy as the great western hub of the Silk Road. East were funneled toward the Roman Mediterranean. The Palmyrene merchants did not just wait for goods to arrive. They organized and financed caravans, provided armed protection, and taxed everything that passed through their city. We know this because they carved their tariff schedule into a massive stone slab. That document, the Palmyrene Tariff, survives, and it is a remarkable window into the commercial life of the ancient Silk Road. Their merchant aristocracy built themselves temples and monuments that still stand in the desert. Palmyra grew so rich and so confident that in the 3rd century, under its queen Zenobia, it briefly challenged Rome itself for control of the eastern Mediterranean. The city was ultimately crushed, but its rise tells the essential truth: control the choke point, and you control the wealth. But the most profound cargo of the Silk Road was never listed on any tariff stone. Along with silk and silver, the routes carried ideas. Buddhism traveled out of India and across Central Asia into China, following the merchants who funded its monasteries. Later, other faiths moved along the same paths. Technologies migrated. Papermaking spread slowly westward out of China. Eventually, artistic styles blended so that Greek forms appear in Buddhist sculpture. And darker things traveled too. The same connected network that carried goods, and centuries later, the plague, would ride these very arteries of trade to The Silk Road did not just move products between civilizations. Because the network was so valuable, empires forever tried to control it, tax the Chinese, the Persians, the various steppe powers, and Rome all sought. But the road resisted ownership. It was too long, too diffuse, too adaptable. For a long stretch of antiquity, the Parthian Empire of Persia sat squarely and made a deliberate business of it, keeping the two great powers apart so that all the Rome and China each suspected the other existed, and each was kept carefully from the distance. When one route became dangerous or overtaxed, the goods simply. The network reached its greatest single moment in the 13th and 14th. For all its brutality, united much of Asia under a single authority and made overland safer than it had ever been. This was the era that carried Marco Polo east. But that golden age did not last. As the Mongol peace fractured, and above all, as Europeans learned to sail directly to Asia by sea, the long overland relay. The Silk Road was not a business, and it had no single builder. And yet it is one of the most important commercial enterprises in human history, modern. It shows us, first, that in a long supply chain, it is often not the producer, final seller who captures the most value, but the middleman who controls the flow. It shows that infrastructure itself, the inns and oases, can carry cargo. It shows that a resilient network with many alternative paths can outlast it, routing around danger like water finding a new channel. And it shows that trade is never only about goods. It carries ideas, technologies, faiths, and consequences that no merchant ever. There is one more lesson, and it is perhaps the sharpest of all. The Silk Road reminds us that whoever sits in the middle, controlling the choke point, holds a power out of all proportion to what they actually make or sell. The Parthians grew rich on it. Palmyra grew rich on it. The Sogdians grew rich on it. None of them grew the silk or wore it. They simply stood in the flow. 2,000 years before container ships, and the Silk Road had already discovered the fundamental truth of a connected world. In making things, or in buying them, but in controlling the network along which. From here, our story leaves the ancient world behind and turns to the moguls of debanking, beginning with a woman who terrified Wall Street.